I'm Sanjali Ganesh, a digital media specialist for the STEM-E Youth Career Development Program. Welcome to the 16th episode of the STEM-E Interviews.
Hi, I'm Rich Byrnes, and I'm the Chief Infrastructure Officer at Port Houston.
Thank you. So first, can you take us through your background, where you started, and how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Well, look, it's been a long and windy road. I started growing up in California. Always had an affinity for math and science, things like that. I went to a junior college out of high school, studying math, and then that continued on to a mechanical engineering study at UC Santa Barbara. From there, I did a couple of unusual things. My first job out of college was working at the South Pole in Antarctica, and I did that for the experience. One of the things that I've thought about throughout all of my education and my career has been keeping your options open. In order to have your options open, you have to be prepared for different opportunities. And so when this opportunity to go to Antarctica presented itself, I jumped on it. From there, I spent a year in the ice. It was like living on another planet, and I can talk forever about it. I came back to the States. I wanted to live overseas again, so I looked for jobs where an engineer could pretty much have an entry-level position. Got into the oil field, worked in Saudi Arabia and Syria and Egypt for a few years. And then after being in the icebox and the frying pan for several years, I decided I'll go back to grad school. And luckily I got accepted by MIT, and I studied, instead of engineering, I studied policy and management. From there, I went into a consulting career focused on maritime consulting. I grew up in a port town. I loved the ocean, so I thought that would take me into an option that would keep me near the sea. You can't consult for very long without evolving and reinventing yourself every few years. So I experienced different kinds of mini careers in maritime consulting, privatization of industries in other countries. I lived in Mexico for a little while, privatizing the ports there. And then I moved into some supply chain and energy consulting with energy companies and big maintenance manufacturing companies and things like that. A few more moves in the consulting industry, and I ended up back at the oil services company that I started with in the desert. They were looking for somebody who knew the oil industry and also knew consulting. And so again, an opportunity presented itself. I happened to be prepared with the skills and background. And so I went to work at Schlumberger for another 5 years. At a certain point, I decided I wanted to try my hand at teaching. And so I thought I was going to be an early retirement, and I stopped. I got certified to teach high school. I looked for a position teaching at college, and I ended up getting both. I taught it at leadership at Texas A&M for a couple of years, and I taught Algebra 2 in high school. Loved it. I admire every teacher that I've ever met now more because I know how hard of a job that is. But then again, another opportunity came to me, and another oil field services company called Halliburton called me up and said, "We'd like you to start a different kind of consulting business." And so I worked for them for 6 years, building up a consulting business that had, I think, about 600 people working in 35 countries. And that took me around the world multiple times a year, traveling to Kuwait, Malaysia, Russia, Brazil, different types of places like that. And then after about 6 years doing that, another call came, and it happened to be with a port here in Houston. And little did the person who was recruiting me know that I had done a study during my very first consulting days for Port Houston. It was a long-range plan, and I knew the port. Like I said, I always wanted to live near the water, look at ships all day. The people were great, so I I changed directions once again, and I went to the Port of Houston, and I've been there for about 5 years. And what I love about that is every day is different. I get to look at ships all day, but we deal with public stakeholders, we deal with energy companies, we deal with other government agencies. We have major projects. We're in the middle of building a $1 billion navigation channel. And we've been studying it and planning it for about 5 years, and we're about to award the first project for actually doing the construction. So I ended up here. Along the way, I met my wife. She was also a consultant at the time. We had 4 kids who are growing up. They range in age from 17 to 25. The 17-year-old was actually in a STEMI workshop a few years ago. She loved it. And so here I am.
That's amazing. You've been all over the world. And of all of those places, what was your favorite place and why did you love it so much?
I was just talking to somebody about that today. I did a project for 6 months living in Rio, in Brazil, and everything was perfect about that project. The project was challenging. We were improving the way they transported fuels across the country, working with a major oil company, Shell oil company. But the location, the office we had a picture window of a beautiful bay. As I said, I grew up in Long Beach. I was living about a half a block from the beach there. Got to go boogie boarding in the morning and still get to the office in time to work all day. And they drink a lot of coffee in Brazil, so we had long days, but they were really fun. Just everything was good. The team was good. The project was good. I was learning. It was a very beautiful place to spend some time.
That's really cool. And before we hop into your current role, you mentioned you went to a junior college. What is your advice for those needing to attend community college with the hope of transferring to a 4-year college?
Well, that's a great question. The educational experience depends on the individual, right? So you can be at Harvard, or you can be at a self-study program online, and you're going to get out of it what you put into it. So I went to the junior college for a few reasons. One was financial, and another was sports. I was a gymnast when I was younger, and they had a great gymnastics team, and I thought that I'd be able to learn that. But you have to have the grades to transfer. And I transferred to UC Santa Barbara. And so if you are going to go to a junior college, it's about building up your credential. When you are applying to a 4-year college, all the universities have to look at maybe your SAT score and your grades in high school. And in a junior college, you have another opportunity to build up some credentials, some good grades, and to show them that you're a worthwhile student. And they may prefer you because you're more mature after a couple of years at a JC.
Thank you. Thank you for that advice. And in regards to how you entered the C-suite, could you tell us what that is?
Sure. A lot of people refer to the C-suite as sort of the senior management team of a company. There are small companies that have 3 employees, and the boss might call themselves the CEO. So that's the C-suite. There are giant companies like Halliburton and Schlumberger where the vice president level is maybe the top 50 or 100 people in the company, and that might be called the C-suite. Although the CEO of that company might think only his office is the C-suite. So the definition changes from company to company. Right now, I'm in what we call a chiefs group. There's 10 of us. We each run a different particular function of the company. But how you get there is really building up the skills to be able to manage a number of things. One is you have to have some leadership credentials. So leadership is about credibility, having a vision, being able to enable teams to get those things done. You have to have basically professional maturity to be able to make some pretty tough decisions from time to time. You have to have collaboration, and you build up these skills over time. You don't learn them in a year. Sometimes you don't learn them in 5 or 10 years. But the thing that senior executives have in common is they stay calm under pressure. They have some experience they bring to the table. They're intellectually curious about how to solve challenges, because if the challenges were black and white and there was an easy answer, you wouldn't necessarily need that kind of experience to answer them, right? So how did I end up here? Just collecting lots of experiences and having a pretty good work ethic, putting the time in, and a little bit of luck, a little bit of mentoring from others. Some of that mentoring, by the way, was not necessarily positive. I had people tell me I wouldn't amount to much, and all that made me think was I'll prove them wrong, right? So you have to have a little bit of confidence in yourself as well. And if you have some smarts and some work ethic and some ability to develop relationships and listen to people and take their advice, you can advance, whether it's your own company or you're working with a big company, or whether you're working as a teacher or a cook or a chemist or any kind of profession. It all takes those kinds of skills. I'll summarize that as you need to have a little bit of intellectual curiosity, something that keeps you awake at night. If that doesn't keep you awake at night, you're not going to be very motivated for the challenge, right? And you have to have what the book writers call emotional intelligence, which is really about understanding who you are, how you deal with challenges, and how you deal with the people around you, and leading a team or being part of a team, and your relationships. Those kinds of things are really good success factors.
Yeah, it seems like you're very intellectually curious and everything. And so, along with that, like, what motivates you to keep doing what you're doing on a daily basis? And what exactly do you do on a daily basis now?
Okay, I get motivated by meaningful work, right? So every job I've ever had, I've tried to find meaning in it. My first job was sweeping floors in a shop when I was 14 or 15 years old, and I didn't know anything. People told me what to do, and I did it. But the meaningfulness of it was I was getting independence, right? I got a paycheck and I could do that. I could use my money the way I wanted to. When I was in the energy space, I found meaning in the fact that we were producing the energy that is lighting schoolhouses in countries around the world. At the port, I find meaning in the fact that we are, we're providing a public service, and the activity of the port creates jobs, it creates prosperity for families living in the shadow of the industries there. And the other part of it is I like the people I work with. I get up every day thinking what's going to happen that day. It's really never the same. So those are the kind of motivating factors. As far as what I do on a day-to-day basis, I'm the Chief Infrastructure Officer, and that's a fancy title. But infrastructure is really the bricks and mortar of the port. A lot of people, and I get some calls from time to time from IT companies thinking I'm doing IT infrastructure, which are the servers and the wires and the hard drives and things like that. But the infrastructure I'm talking about are structural, docks and wharves and cranes and the things that move cargo around. So it starts with that. We run projects. We probably spend a couple $100 million a year on designing and building the next big project at our port. But we also plan ahead. So we think about asset management. And asset management is saying the things you have, how healthy are they? If you have a car, you got to put gas in it to drive it every day. But once in a while, you have to do an oil change. You got to maintain that asset in order to have it live a good life, right? So the life cycle of the asset. And then we plan even further out. We think about, what's the port going to look like in 20 years? And we just published about a year and a half our 2040 plan, which talks about the main things that are important to the port. In our case, it's the channel I talked about building. It's the cargo and being able to handle all the cargo that's coming. It's about our relationships with the community, and it's about managing change, which means adopting new technologies and so forth. And when you put a plan like that out for the public, you have to have something that's memorable. So those are the 4 C's, and I always try to remember it by channel, cargo, community, and change. So that's kind of the assets and the planning around that. We also have a group that focuses on what we call freight mobility. Freight mobility is basically if cargo comes in on a ship and they put it on a truck to go drive to some store someplace, and that truck gets stuck in traffic, it doesn't help anybody, right? So we want to be efficient about supply chains, and so we work with the highway authorities, and we work with the planning authorities to make sure that the roads and rail networks are as free flowing as possible. As a port, the highways aren't our responsibility, but we want to make sure that they get the good amount of attention for the truck drivers and the freight movement. We also have to manage the channel. The port is what we call the local sponsor in partnership with the federal government of this big 52-mile long waterway called the Houston Ship Channel. And so we have a role to play in terms of making sure that it's always as deep as it should, so the ships can come in fully laden with cargo. And then we also have a group which is focused on analytics, business cases. If you think about seeing new challenges every day, somebody has to put the analysis together to say, take it to their boss to get it approved for investment. They may want to spend $1 million changing the configuration of a gate that trucks drive through. And in order to get the $1 million approved, you got to show me the math, show me the analysis that says there's a need for this, it's affordable, my $1 million will have a return on investment. And so we have a small group that helps people around the port put that analysis together, and they study things like sustainability, energy usage. We had to justify our case for adopting electric vehicles into our fleet. And so for an example, you're going to buy that electric vehicle. Are you going to get a return on the investment? Part of that return is efficiency, and there's an amount of money associated with that, but part of it is an environmental benefit in terms of reduced emissions. And so you have to add it all up, put it on paper, show somebody, and as I say, you need to have a case that you can take to the bank, because if a banker won't give you money, why should I? And then finally, we have our environmental group that also focuses on what we call environmental leadership, making sure that we can do as much as we can with topics like air quality, water quality. We recycle, thousands of tons of material because we have to be a good steward of our resources, and part of that is making sure that we leave this place better than we found it.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that insight on what you do exactly. And I'm sure there were many opportunities that presented itself to you, as you said earlier. And did you do any internships that helped you succeed in your past roles or current role that you have now?
Yes, that's getting to be ancient history by now, but I'll tell you about one. I had an internship building DC-9s for McDonnell Douglas, which is now part of the Boeing family of aircraft manufacturers. And, I was a mechanical engineering student looking for any job that anybody would hire me. That company was in my hometown. I took the job. It was fascinating. I got to learn a little bit about design engineering. I got to learn a little bit about drafting and the math and the calculations you have to make. But what it taught me was I didn't want to do that for a career. And so sometimes an internship can tell you as much about what directions not to go as directions to go. Uh, in other roles I've had, we've hired interns for the summer, and then we try to recruit them to come back to our company because we really like them. I knew whether or not they liked me or not. I didn't want to build planes for the rest of my life, and I went a different direction. And you have to make choices in life. Keep your options open, as I said, and that was one option that I looked at, and then decided not to do it. Other summers, instead of doing internships, I just got a job. I worked in a hotel, and I was the night clerk from midnight till 8 in the morning. And that taught me all about customer service and dealing with people who come in late and want to wake up early, and you've got to be there to help them. And so every job will have something to teach you. And then as you accumulate that, that's how you get, old and gray hair like I am, and hopefully with a little bit of experience to bring to bear to new problems.
Yeah, I'm sure you accumulated multiple different lessons and learned from lots of them as you're now the chief infrastructure officer. So, what do you like about your current role as a CIO?
So everything, every day is different. I tell some people sometimes in the morning I might be thinking about what's the future of the port? What are we going to look like in 20 years? What kind of technology are we going to be implementing? Are we going to move the cargo the same way as we have for the last 20 years? And then in the afternoon, I might be dealing with a problem about a ship that ran into a dock and completely obliterated the fender system. And now we've got to get repairs designed, and that involves structural engineering and maybe electrical engineering. And so I've got lots of really smart people that address these problems specifically with their expertise, but I am kind of a dot connector. And my role is to make sure people have the resources in order to get their jobs done. Sometimes when there's more things to do than we have people and hours in the day, we have to prioritize. And so I get to tell folks what they should do and allow them not to do other things because they don't have the time in the day. So it's a little bit about managing the folks. Sometimes it's like coaching a basketball team. You got a number of players, you got to put them on the court. Not everybody is a point guard, 3-point shooter, but some are really good rebounders, some are really good defenders. And you put everybody where they're most useful and where they like to play, and you end up with a pretty productive team. But again, in the morning, it might be long-term thinking. In the afternoon, it is, immediate repairs on something. In between, it may be dealing with personal issues. Somebody, got COVID. What do we do about that? Or just managing people. That relationship part comes out in some aspects. The technical credibility. I have to pull on my engineering experience in order to listen to an engineer explain a complex problem. And in some cases, I have to take that engineering explanation and translate that to other managers at the port because they may not be engineers, and they need it to be summarized at an executive level. And so you have to be able to speak different languages and talk at different levels as well. Say, talk at the C-suite level, high level strategy, big allocation of resources, and then go down to the street where someone is pouring concrete and talk to them about are we getting the service from our contractor that we need, and be very specific about are we getting what we're paying for, how important is this, why isn't it done today versus yesterday, and those types of things.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure all of your past experience are all contributing to your current success now as a CIO, but is there anything that you dislike about your job?
There's not much that I dislike about this current job. When things don't move fast enough, I get a little frustrated. But again, you have to learn to manage yourself and manage your relationships with others. That's the theme around what I called emotional intelligence a while ago. And so, if things are slowed down um, and there are barriers in the way, that's just a new problem, and you need to kind of sort out how we're going to get around this. What's the alternative? There's always three ways to solve a problem. So what are the other two ways? Um, and so I can't really say I don't like anything about my job right now. So I guess I'm lucky to be able to say that.
That's so great. And I'm sure COVID-19 must have struck you guys with a few challenges. So, what are some of the other challenges that you faced, and how has COVID-19 impacted?
Yeah, well, let me start with COVID-19 because we have about 700 people at the port. They include people who let the trucks in the gates every day. They include fire and police force and operators, and then they include a lot of people who work in the office. And so many of us had to pretty much stay at work during COVID, but many of us, for safety reasons, went into a telecommuting mode. So about 200 went into telecommuting on March 18th, 2020, so about 18 months ago. And, all of a sudden we found ourselves trying to figure out what Zoom and WebEx and Teams are. A lot of frustration with people who didn't want to go into this new mode. Uh, I I started writing an email to all of my team every night, and I think I did it for about 200 or 300 nights in a row, just to make sure that everybody was on the same page. And that communication, I think, held people together. Uh, the During the first month or two, people learned what WebEx is, and I think now people are so used to the benefits of WebEx and Zoom that they don't want to go back to face-to-face meetings if they don't have to, and so forth. So now we're dealing with that because there is something that organizations lose when you're all in 2D on a computer screen. You lose the ability to have that little mentoring discussion in the hallway. How are you doing? Did you think about this? No one schedules a Zoom call to have small talk that is very, very important. And I also think we've lost the what I call the whiteboard session, where you get three people or five people in a room and you say, let's figure this out. And you start scribbling on a whiteboard, and then you kind of organize your thoughts, and then everybody kind of sees the problem from the same page, but they've all brought different perspectives to it. So we're getting that back now that the people are vaccinated, and we're starting to work together a couple of days a week. So that's the COVID challenge and how we're getting through it. Obviously, we're not all the way through it. Other challenges, we've got some mega projects like this Big Ship Channel project. We have a partner called the federal government. We have people who want to use that channel, the industry. There's no shortage of people who have an opinion about how it should be run. So dealing with all of those different perspectives has required us to, we have a very talented team, and we are updating all kinds of stakeholders every day on everything from technical aspects to financial aspects. And, that's been the biggest challenge for the port over the last 18 months at least, but really we've been planning it for 5 years. And so I'm looking forward to when we're actually constructing it and moving on to the next challenge. That's all about what are we going to do over the next 20 years? How are we going to grow? We're getting tremendous growth in our port. We've had double-digit growth in the last 4 out of the last 5 years. And so when, I'm infrastructure, right? So I'll give an analogy. When the people on the highway add a lane to a freeway, the day they're done, that lane is full of cars. So no one ever builds it, way in advance. They build it probably later than it's needed. So we're constantly trying to build these projects that take years to plan and sometimes a year and a half to build. And the people who want to use it want it yesterday. So there's a balance financially, planning, design wise. Do you want to do things now? You want to do it a year from now? Some of these decisions take a lot of thinking and a lot of consensus across different types of people. But I'll stop there.
Yeah, for sure. And now moving on to a lighter topic, I guess. What are some of the rewarding things from your job?
Oh, rewarding things are, I'll tell you this. About 10 years ago, are you on LinkedIn? So if you're on LinkedIn, you make a statement about yourself, who you are, and that type of thing. And when people look at it, they understand a little bit about you. And I decided to, kind of announce what I stand for. After you've been in a career for a while, you're learning your first third of your career. You're kind of producing the second third of your career. The third third of your career, you got to figure out what you're all about. And so I thought it was two things. One was improving the way businesses work and developing people. And so when I can see an improvement in a process or a result of something that we're doing more efficiently and so forth, I feel really good about that because I think I had a hand in it somehow, enabling somebody to do something that they produce the result, but somehow I helped them. And then the flip side of that coin is developing people. So, organizations work because they have physical assets, they work because they have intellectual property, but they won't work at all unless you have the talent and the people who are continually developing. And I've had people help me in my career, and that is really important to me. So when I see somebody take on a challenge and I've been able to give them a little bit of advice, that's the reward right there.
Yeah, and for sure. And among the people you've worked with or worked for, who do you admire the most and why?
So I will name a couple of folks. There was a woman named Sarah who I worked with at a previous company, and she just had everything. She could build a relationship with our client. She had the intellectual curiosity to come up with solutions. She was very tenacious in that if she had a problem, she wouldn't let go of that problem until she had it solved. And she was fun to work with, great sense of humor. And I really admired her because, she had so many positive qualities, right? And there was another woman that I worked with named Lydia, who, when she first started to work with me, she was a very experienced and smart technical professional, but I gave her some challenges to go implement a planning software around the world in about 20 countries. And by the time when she started, she was shy and she wouldn't talk to an executive. When she was finished, she would tell vice presidents what to do. And later, she opened up an office for our company in Romania. Just went there. I said, go open up an office in Romania, and she went and did it. So I think this was all about willingness to take on a challenge, not accepting any kind of self-limitations. And I just admire the heck out of those folks. I also admire my current boss. I've got a couple of bosses, and they both are very thoughtful, very respectful. They allow me to get my job done. They don't micromanage. They are very clear on what they want, and they put things in terms that I wouldn't have thought about saying them myself that way. It's just I learn different ways of dealing with people, different ways of managing by watching other managers, and the current people I work with, I learn a lot from.
Yeah. For sure. And if I'm a middle or high school student interested in pursuing, what advice would you give me to get started?
Oh, I would say don't have any limits, right? So I've used the phrase "keep your options open." You can keep your options open by being prepared. So having the best education you can. Uh, Math and science are better. You can always move away from math and science, but later in your career, you can't move towards them. You have to have the basics and the training and so forth. But math and science can make you a business owner. It can make you an entrepreneur. It can make you an engineer for life if that's what you want to do. Those types of areas to study. But I would also, you know, don't be hierarchical. And this is something that when I was a kid, and especially in undergraduate university, I never asked the professors questions. I never had a relationship with a professor where, they might know me by my first name because I'm in their class, but we never had a dialogue. When I got into graduate school, you learn that they're people too. You have intellectual conversations. You get advice. It carries through to the way you conduct your work, what you learn. And so I would start having relationships with my teachers as early as, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. I would ask them what they thought about a challenge I'm facing. And I know I was incredibly shy up until about 11th, 12th grade. So, I didn't even talk to other people very much, let alone teachers. But if I could say one thing, it would be, go engage your teachers, go engage the adults, talk to them like you're all just people. And you'll find that experience will reward you down the road because you'll be a much more smooth communicator when it comes to getting something you need done when you're in college or after college, getting a job or a promotion or a business plan approved or something like that.
Yeah. And what advice would you give me to be successful in the field? Any pearls of wisdom?
Well, besides engaging the teachers and studying hard, having a good work ethic, not having any limits. I think those are kind of the keys to the kingdom. And don't take no for an answer. There's some people make rules for themselves. They say, "Oh, I can never do that." Change the never to can, and there's no reason why you can't.
Yeah. And what is your advice to parents of students wanting to pursue a role in your field?
So I would expose them to, if I was a parent, and I try to do this with my kids. They're not always interested in coming down to work with me, but I learned so much in a conference call. I learned so much in visiting a facility and seeing how machinery works, or seeing how the truck drivers get their jobs done, or whatever it is. And I wish, my parents had dragged me to those kinds of places so that I could see, how the real world works, that it just takes ordinary people to get them done. Sometimes my kids come with me and they love it. So that's what it's all about. I think is giving them exposure and spending time with your kids and your students, and talking about what you just saw is really important.
Yeah. And is there any advice you could give to your past self? And if you could do something differently, what would it be?
Oh gosh, it would be less shy, take on some of those challenges that I should have taken on. When I was younger, I thought about, I'd like to be an actor, but I was too shy. And so my friends were on the acting class, and I watched them, and that was great. But Now in my current role, I was on stage this morning in a panel in a global energy summit. And I somehow between then and now, I've learned to stand up in front of a large audience and speak my mind and articulate things. But when I was younger, I couldn't have done that. I never took a speech and communications class, which I would have taken just to learn. I didn't think it was important because I was too interested in math and science. But if you're an engineer or a scientist, you need to communicate your idea. I mean, you have to sell your idea to somebody who's going to either fund it or collaborate with you. And so, that's one piece of advice. The other piece is kind of recognize what you're good at and then pursue that. So I was always good at listening. And I was always good at sports and always good at math. And I think a lot of those skills or attributes have carried me down a road that used all those talents. But at the same time, I had a very interesting, I started out saying I had a long and windy road, opportunity from here, opportunity there, pursuing different things. Sometimes I feel like I was in a river and it was carrying me through these different opportunities. If you recognize what you're good at and just kind of take inventory, you might see an opportunity that didn't occur to you. And that might be your true passion in life. And I never took stock of myself until I was much older. And so that's what I would tell a young me is be less shy, take on challenges you don't think you can handle, understand yourself a little bit better. And that's a hard thing to tell somebody. Understand yourself. What does that mean? It just means, be a little bit more introspective. Maybe ask other people for feedback. Ask people, hey, am I doing okay? Did you like the way I did that presentation in English class? And they'll tell you yes or no. I mean, people you trust, right? But those types of things.
Yeah, for sure. And we were looking at the past, so now let's look at the future. So like, what
Sure.
goals do you have for the future?
Well, it's never over till it's over type of thing. So I want to get at work, I want to get our current project done. As I said, we've been planning it for 5 years. We've been designing it with a big team of engineers. And now we're about ready to start building it. So that's going to take about 4 years. And I want to see that completed. I want to see us really get more clear about our long-range plans. As I said, we have a 20-year plan. The thing about a 20-year plan is the longer the time frame, the less accurate it's going to be, right? Nobody can predict the future. So we got to take that 20-year plan and figure out how we're going to get to, 2023 and 2025 and 2027, and always think about, the details that go into that. And then in my personal life, like I said, my kids are 25 to 17. I got one more that's going to graduate. See them through their university and careers, and take a few more trips with my wife. Like we drove across the country this year instead of flying. We drove and really saw the country at 60 miles an hour as opposed to 600 miles an hour. And the travel is always a great experience, and I look forward to doing some more of that as well.
Yes, for sure. And thank you, Mr. Rich Byrnes, for your time. And thank you to our viewers. Be sure to check out our other episodes and subscribe to our channel, and stay up to date with all our upcoming events and activities by following us on social media and signing up for our email list. Check the description for all links, and we will see you next time.